Good morning. I wasn't ready. They stopped the countdown. I'm like, no, I thought there were 20 more seconds. No, it's fine. Good morning. Welcome to Real Life Silver Valley. It is real life. Let's be clear, folks. Go ahead and stand with us as we start off our morning praising our Heavenly Father. Here we go. You heal the brokenhearted. You set the captive free. You lift the heavy burden. And even now you are lifting me. There is no healer like the Lord our Maker. There is no equal to the King of Kings. Oh, our God is with us, we will fear no evil, 'cause you do impossible things, yeah, you do impossible things. Though I walk through the valley, darkness surrounding me, there you prepare a table in the presence of my enemies. Yeah, there is no healer like the Lord our Maker. There is no equal to the King of Kings. Oh, our God is with us, we will fear no evil, 'cause you do impossible things, yeah, you do the impossible, possible. One word and the walls start falling. One word and the blind will see. One word and the sin is forgiven, 'cause you do impossible things. One word and the walls start falling. One word and the blind will see. One word and the sin is forgiven, 'cause you do impossible things. There is no healer like the Lord our Maker. There is no equal to the King of Kings. Oh, our God is with us, we will fear no evil, 'cause you do impossible things, yeah. There is no healer like the Lord our Maker. There is no equal to the King of Kings. Oh, our God is with us, we will fear no evil, 'cause you do impossible things, yeah. You do impossible things. You heal the brokenhearted. You set the captive free. You lift the heavy burden, Jesus. And even now you are lifting me. Yes, even now you are lifting me. Oh, even now you are lifting me.
Good morning, Real Life. Go ahead and take a seat. Good to see everybody this morning. Man, I was gone for a week, and it just feels like I'm back with family again. It's good to see everybody. It feels like I've been gone forever. Did everybody get a bulletin this morning? Anybody need one? If you do, raise your hand. No takers? All right. If you need one, we got servers in the back that would be happy to get a bulletin for you. Lots of things going on. We'll just cover a couple of them. One is the giving. Multiple ways to give. You can give online, give by text. If you want to drop your tithes and offerings in the boxes in the back, that works as well. But it's hard to believe. It's almost like summer's coming to the end. I'm looking at the dates on these, and there's like September, and youth groups kicking up, and small groups are starting up again. So be watching for more announcements on the small groups. We should be seeing some information out at the connecting point. So be in touch with your leaders and your groups and find out when your startup dates are. The youth group is going to be starting September 8th will be our first meeting. And we're headed to Silverwood September 11th. Cost on that's $30, so make sure you get in contact with Amy Walsh and make arrangements for that. Look forward to seeing everybody going out to Silverwood. That's always a good time. Women's brunch. Looks like we're having a granddaughter or grandson shower for Christy Jacobs here on August 11th, starting at 10 a.m. So it looks like that's a women's ministry event. So guys, sorry you don't get to go to that one, but I'm sure she would appreciate your prayers and thoughts anyways. What else we got? Parenting class beginning August 20th, trust-based relational interventions. Lots of big words, but probably a lot of good teaching in there as well. That one's going to be led by Navarra Reardon, but contact Christy Jacobs on that one for more information. And small group leaders. If we do have any small group leaders in here, we've got a training not this week, but the following week from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So if you didn't go to the first training last month, please try to make arrangements to show up to the training on August 24th. And then finally, we've got these orange cards inside the bulletins and also some blue cards in the back of the seat pockets. If you would, just go ahead and fill those out. If you're a regular member, just your name. And just drop it in the box in the back. If this is your first time here, please go ahead and fill that out completely. We'd love to just get in contact with you, see how we can pray for you, and just tell you more about the church. And a spot on the back there, how we can join you in prayer. That's really what we'd like to know the most. Our elders and prayer team pray over these prayer requests every week. They are held in confidence. So if you need some prayer, just go ahead and drop that on there. Prayer, praise, we'd love to join you however we can. Let's pray, and then we'll get back into worship, and then John Cook's going to deliver our message this morning. So, Father, we just thank you for today, Lord. We thank you for each and every person that you've drawn here today. Lord, pray that you would be working in our hearts now just to calm us and still our hearts, to prepare us to hear from you. Father, we just pray that you would be just stirring in John's heart this morning as well, Lord, that he would be able to just preach your word boldly, truthfully, and Lord, in a manner that we can receive it. And Lord, we just look forward to that. Lord, we give this day to you. In Jesus' name, amen. If you would, go ahead and please stand and join us in worship.
And I'm sure he's going to love it, but thank you, Ray, who is our newest member of the team. I feel like he has a very large following kind of out there. Oh, wait, that's all his family. It's fine. Thanks, Ray, and we're praying that Charity feels better soon. All right, here we go. Water you turned into wine, open the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you, none like you. Into the darkness you shine, out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you, none like you. Our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Into the darkness you shine, out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you, none like you. And our God is greater, our God is stronger. God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. And our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? What could stand against? The splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. To age he stands, and time is in his hands, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. The Godhead three in one, Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb. The Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Name above all names, worthy of all praise. My heart will sing how great is our God. You're the name above all names. You are worthy of all praise, and my heart will sing how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. how great is our God. Lord God, we love you. We praise you. We shout for joy at who you are, Lord God. And we just come before you this morning, singing those praises, grateful that you are bigger and better than all the things going on around us. I pray, Lord, that we would just focus on who you are, our great, amazing Creator God. In your precious name, amen. I came to you with my heart in pieces and found the God with healing in his hands. I turned to you, put everything behind me, and found the God who makes all things new. I look to you, drowning in my questions, and found the God who holds all wisdom. And I trusted you. I stepped out on the ocean. You caught my hand among the waves, 'cause you're the God of all my days. Each step I take, you make a way, and I will give you all my praise. My seasons change, you stay the same. You're the God of all my days. I ran from you and wandered in the shadows, and found the God who relentlessly pursues. I hid from you, haunted by my failure, and found the God whose grace still covers me. I fell on you when I was at my weakest, and found the God, the lifter of my head. And I worshiped you and felt you right beside me. You're the reason that I sing, 'cause you're the God of all my days. Each step I take, you make a way, and I will give you all my praise. My seasons change, you stay the same. You're the God of all my days. In my worry, God, you are my stillness. In my searching, God, you are my answer. In my blindness, God, you are my vision. In my bondage, God, you are my freedom. In my weakness, God, you are my power. You're the reason that I sing, 'cause you're the God of all my days. Each step I take, you make a way, and I will give you all my praise. My seasons change, you stay the same. You're the God of all my days. In my blindness, God, you are my vision. In my bondage, God, you are my freedom. All my days.
Good morning, church. Thanks, worship team. Y'all can take a seat. That was awesome. That was great. Thank y'all. So my name's John Cook. I'm an elder here at Real Life, and I'm preaching today because Gene and a couple other guys hiked Mount Bora yesterday, which is the tallest peak in Idaho. And I got a report yesterday that they did get to the top. They got their photo up there with their Real Life sign, so that's pretty cool accomplishment for them. So for those who are new or maybe haven't kind of been in a while, just to let you know kind of where we are study-wise. We're studying God's attributes. So we're looking at what does the Bible say about who God is? Not what we think or what we want it to be, or what the world says that it may be, but what does God's word say about who he is? Because, man, that is such a critical thing in our life, because what we truly believe about who God is and what we think about, his characteristics and his nature and what matters to him, that's going to shape everything about what we do. It's going to shape how we approach ministry. It's going to shape how we approach our family. It's going to shape how we approach church. It's going to shape everything. And so we just, the sermon team kind of decided that, man, this is such an important thing to go through. Really at any time in our life, but especially at a time like this when there's just so much unknown in our life, and there's so many things that are changing in the world around us, and we see these things shifting and changing in our culture and in politics and in the economy and in life, and so how do we look to what God is? I mean, Gene even talked about last week how God does not change. There's things in our life and things in this world that will change, but God does not change. So he is the same God who created this universe, who brought Abraham, Abram out of his land and brought him to Israel, and the same God who was there when Jesus died on the cross. He's going to be the same God when this world ends, and that's the end of this earth. So we've been looking at a lot of different things. Talked about God as a creator, talked about God's sovereignty, talked about the Trinity of God, how he's this 3-in-1 God. We talked about his justice. We talked about his truth. We talked about faithfulness. Talked about righteousness. Talked about love. Next week, Kevin's going to be talking about grace and mercy. And so just looking at these things that define who he is, and then therefore should define how we live our life and how we act and what we do. It was really pretty interesting and pretty challenging, but I was going to share just a little snippet of Friday evening before I was supposed to preach. I mean, literally 2 minutes before church is about to start, and I'm supposed to come in here. I get this phone call, and I get this news. I get this information that's just pretty hard, pretty challenging. I'm like, this is not the best time to find out this before I'm supposed to be getting up here to preach and to talk to people about God's word. And I'm just as we start singing, as we start worshiping, I mean, I really felt like God was like, all right. So yeah, you got this news, you got this information that you've got to work through, but do you believe what you're about to talk about? Do you believe what you're about to tell all these people? And it was super challenging. So as I'm trying to, pray and trying to worship and trying to, also, know that, yeah, this is something that I'm going to have to deal with, but it was just a really good wrestle for God to bring before me, before it was like, okay, I do believe these things. So in light of knowing who you are and what I believe about what this says, how am I going to then move forward? So it was really cool how it was hard, but it was really cool how God brings those things, sometimes not at the time we would have had that happen. So the first thing that I thought about as I was getting ready to preach is getting ready to come into this study, I started really thinking about, what has this study meant to me? What has mattered about this whole thing, for me personally? What has it kind of helped shape in my life? And I came up with 3 things. The first one is that sometimes I forget who I worship. I sometimes forget who my God is, because life can be happening because I've got hard things or I've got good things. I think sometimes even the good things in life can take us away and help and kind of make us forget who God is and who we trust him. And so it's been just a great reminder about the God that I worship. I know one of the things that is over the past couple of weeks that has been super convicting is Gene, when he talked about it a lot when he talked about faithfulness. And he was sharing examples about like faithful things that we can have in our life. You know, you can have a faithful car sometimes, a car that always starts up. I had this blue Jeep Cherokee that was like older than the hills and looked terrible. And like the ceiling like was one of those that hung down and like it rubbed on your head, you know, and my wife didn't like to even ride in the car. Like she hated riding the car. But that car had the fewest problems of any car that we probably ever had. Or a person who's faithful. But then they said, but even those things will let me down. I don't drive that Jeep anymore. You know, I mean, that Jeep eventually, you know, did have to go away. Even somebody else knew they had that Jeep for a while, and they eventually even had to go away. But God is not even faithful like that. He is more faithful. He's completely faithful. And just how, even in the human examples that we have to try to look at these characteristics, God's better than those. You know, and so it was just a good reminder for me about who I worship. Then I got to thinking about how sometimes if I don't truly understand who my God is, are there things that I'm asking him for that he's like I won't do those because those go against my nature. Those go against who I am as God and my character and what I will do because of who I am as God. Or are the things that I'm missing out that I'm not asking him about, that I'm not saying, hey, Lord, can you do this? Will you do this in my life? Because I just don't remember or realize who he is as my God. And then finally, the better I understand my boss, the better I know how to do what he wants. So any of us who've worked for somebody or are a boss could probably relate to and understand the fact that the better the people who are working for, they understand what you want and what you need from them. Need is not the right word for God, but what you want from them and how you want them to do those things, the better they can do. So the better I can be a disciple of him, the better I can be a minister of his word, the better I can be a godly father if I understand what my boss wants from me. So those are just some things for me that have really, I think, mattered for this message. So with that, I'm going to pray, and then we're going to jump in, okay? Dear Lord, I just want to thank you for this morning. Thank you for this time to come before you and say, Lord, that you matter, that you're important in my life. I want to listen to your word. I want to worship you. I want to understand more about who you are. And so Lord, I just pray that you open up our hearts to hear the truth that's in your word. Lord, I just pray that you speak through me, that your Holy Spirit just works in my heart and in the hearts of those here in the church to hear your word, Lord, and that we're changed by your word, and that we take this and that we go out into the world to serve you. So Lord, we just thank you that you are our God and that we can trust what your word says about who you are. Amen. So I've got a question. So was there someone in your life when you were younger, and I say younger because that's probably when this was going on, when there was just someone who you like just looked up to, you saw them and you're like, man, everything that they do is just amazing and awesome. Everything that they do, they just seem to excel at, and they just seem to succeed. And it's like, man, they see a goal and it happens, and they do it. And you just looked up to them, and you just wanted to be just like them, or wanted that life that they had. Maybe it was a parent, maybe it was an older sibling, maybe it was a sports figure, maybe it was an entertainer. But was there someone in your life when you were younger who kind of fit that mold? Okay? And so my next question for you is does that person still hold that same level that they used to? And my guess is probably not, because as we have those people in our life when we're younger and as we grow up, we eventually start to see that maybe they are not as great as we thought. They're still really good, but not as great as we thought. They fail us, they let us down, or maybe they're just not able to do the things that they once were, that we once admired them for. I mean, I think about the Olympics that we just got done with. I mean, great athletes, amazing athletes that are competing, But the athletes that were competing 20 years ago are probably not the same athletes who are competing today, competing last month in the Olympics. Because we get older, we age. Someone new and better and younger and stronger, comes up and takes that position and takes that kind of role of the best. But we serve a God who is limitless. We serve a God who has no end to his greatness or to his abilities or to what he's able to accomplish or do. And so today I'm talking about, I think, 3 of his attributes that kind of really kind of help encompass or kind of provide that foundation for God being the all-powerful authority or the one who is that greatest. And we're talking about his omnipotence, his omniscience, and his omnipresence. I'll explain those words in a minute. So for some of you who are like, wait, what does that word mean? Or that sounds weird. Sometimes they'll call them the omnis. And so we're going to talk about how those 3 words together, or those 3 attributes of God together, I think kind of set up God as being limitless. So the first one that we're going to dive into is omnipotence. And so omnipotence is a word that means all-powerful. It comes from a Latin word. It comes from 2 Latin words, actually. The first Latin word is omnis, so we get the omni. It means all. And then the second word is potens, which is where we get our word powerful. So all-powerful. And so that word, though, it's a Latin word. So it's not Greek, it's not Hebrew, which were the languages that the Bible was written in. So it's not a word that you'll actually find in the Bible. So you can read the Bible cover to cover, and you're not going to find the word omnipotent anywhere in the Bible. But you're going to find a lot of words that point to that and that describe that attribute, very similar to that word. Like, for example, the phrase Almighty God or Lord Almighty shows up 345 times throughout the Bible. And that's a lot of times that characteristic gets mentioned. In Psalms 91:1, it says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." And in Revelations chapter 1:8, it says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty." So again, this idea, almighty, all-powerful, all, encompassing. And we're going to look at just a lot of the different places where we can see how God is all-powerful in this world and in our life. The first one, which was talked about a little bit when this sermon series first started, God has the power to create. He has the power over creation. God spoke and things came into existence. So God's words were able to bring things into being. In Psalms 33:6, it says, "The Lord merely spoke, and the heavens were created. He breathed the word, and all the stars were born." Okay, so just by the power of his words, everything came into being, and everything's held together. And I got to thinking about the power of words and how, people can have power in certain situations, and they can speak, and kind of rule by their word. But in the end, there's a limit to that. There's a spot where they don't have authority or influence. And then I got to thinking about, what power do my words have? Do my words really have any power? And I really got to thinking that no, they probably don't, because I've got great kids. I have awesome kids. I love my kids to death. But if my words had power, the front door would always be shut. Okay, front door would never be open, and there would be no shoes around the front door. But because my words have a very limited amount of power, the front door is still sometimes open, and there are still shoes scattered about the front door still. So my words have very little amount of power. But God's words have an infinite amount of power in them. The other thing that I thought about when I was reading through this and studying this is how God's power in his words to create. He created everything from nothing, okay? So he was able to create everything in this world: stars, seas, trees, plants, me, animals, atoms, everything from nothing. I got to speak on Genesis. Gosh, it was probably a year or two ago, and I got to talk on chapter 1 on creation, and it was really cool to kind kind of look at those things and that creation process. But one of the things that came out that I still remember from that message is it talks about in chapter 1, it talks about how the world or the earth or the creation was formless and empty, is how a lot of the translations put it. And so I found that there's this the Hebrew word, or the translation from the Hebrew for that is a word called tohu wabahu, which means chaotic nothingness. So it's not even that there was like nothing, it was like this big mess of nothing, which I don't even know how to like wrap my head around what that looks like, but it doesn't look like anything that I could ever make anything from. And he created everything that in his power and in his strength. I mean, everything in this world that we could ever create, that I could ever make, that I could ever build, I have to take raw materials. I got to take something and make something with it. For those of you who have ever built a house, I mean, I am super impressed by that skill and by that ability, but you had to take wood, you had to take nails, you had to take screws, you had to take insulation, you had to take things to put it together to make this thing. Or, if you built a car or built a rocket or whatever, I mean, you've got to take stuff. But God didn't have to do that. He was able to take nothing and make everything. In having limitless power, he also has control and power over the natural laws of earth, over the physical, laws of earth, the things that are just kind of laws that we have no ability to change and to do anything about. He has the ability to change those things. Think about Jesus walking on water. I mean, that's something that's physically impossible, to walk on liquid water, not ice. Okay, for all you out there thinking, well, I can walk on ice. It's like, okay, that's great. But we're talking about liquid water here. But because of God's power over the physical laws, he could do that. Joshua was fighting this battle with for the promised land, and it talks about how God stopped the sun to give them a longer day, to fight that. We all talk about how, gosh, I wish I had more hours in the day, and we have no ability to change that. I mean, God can. Then we're like, all right, we're just going to hold the sun right there, let them finish their thing, and go. He's got the power to control and shape the world. He stopped a storm. Jesus was with his disciples out on this boat, and he's taking a nap and he's sleeping, and the storm comes up and it's raging and it's they're worried they're going to sink, and Jesus gets up out of the boat and he's like, tells the storm to stop, and it stops through God's power. He made food appear. He could create food from nothing. He fed his people in the desert, the Jewish people in the desert for 40 years, caused earthquakes, brought fire from heaven. I mean, all things that were because of his power over his creation that he created in his power. Another place where God has power, he's got power over the rulers of this world, over kingdoms, over kings, over presidents, over governors, over mayors, over, dictators. Those people have power because of what God has said, can happen. In Romans chapter 13, verse 1, it says, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. So as much as we may not like or not want, a certain, senator or governor, or we see other countries and we see things happening, in other countries with leaders, and we're like, man, that is not what I think should be happening. That is not, and those things may not be right. Excuse me. But we also do have to know and understand that God is in control of that situation still. So I found these verses in Isaiah that were just, when I started reading through them, I was like, wow, God does have a plan, and he does have things under his control. It's in Isaiah chapter 45. And I'm going to kind of read a couple of different sections of verses in there, but they'll be on the screen for y'all to follow along. In Isaiah 45, it says, this is what the Lord says to Cyrus, his anointed one, whose right hand he will empower. Before him, mighty kings will be paralyzed with fear. Their fortress gates will be opened, never to shut again. And why have I called you for this work? Why did I call you by name when you did not know me? It is for the sake of Jacob, my servant, Israel, my chosen one. I am the Lord. There is no other God. I have equipped you for battle, though you don't even know me. This is again talking about Cyrus. though you don't even know me. So all the world from east to west will know there is no other God. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I create the light and make the darkness. I send the good times and the bad times. I, the Lord, am the one who does these things, okay? So what we see in these verses is we see the Lord says there's Cyrus, who's going to be his right. He's going to use Cyrus to accomplish these things. And first off, he's like, Cyrus doesn't know me, okay? But because I am God, I am going to use him, and I'm going to make this happen. And so the first thing that as I was reading through this and kind of looking at and realizing is that the Israelites, when Isaiah wrote this, were like, who's Cyrus? I don't know who Cyrus is. Cyrus was not a world leader at this time. Cyrus is going to come in about 200 years and be this leader. But God, knowing what he is going to do and having the power to shape and control governments and everything. So Isaiah is talking to the Israelites because they're about to be taken over. He's prophesying kind of that they're going to be overrun and captured. But it's not even going to be the Persians, who Cyrus is eventually going to be the king of. It's going to be the Babylonians, and the Babylonians are going to be taken over by the Persians, and that's when Cyrus is going to do this. So it took 200 years for this plan to happen, for God to work out this plan through his power and his might. And then in Ezra chapter 1, verse 1 through 3, we get to read, it says, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to fill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah talked about this as well, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation throughout his realms and also to put it in writing. This is what Cyrus, king of Persia, says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judea. Any of his people among you may go to Jerusalem in Judea and bring the temple of the Lord, the God of Israel, the God who is in Jerusalem, and may their God be with them. So God had a plan for his people. God had a plan for them. He's new, okay? They're going to fall. They're going to mess up as a kingdom, as a nation that's supposed to follow me. They're going to get taken over. He says, but I'm going to bring in this king who doesn't know me, who doesn't know who I am, but I'm going to show him who I am. And then he's going to send my people back so that my kingdom can be rebuilt, because he has power over the kingdoms and rulers of this world. And it's not just the kind of like the earthly or the people kingdoms and rulers of this world, the powers in this world. God even has power over the devil, okay? So the devil has been given, the ability to do things here on earth. He has been given the ability to, it talks about how he can seek and destroy, and how he's the father of lies, and he's out there deceiving and trying to pull people. God gave him the power to do that for this time, but he only has the power that God has given him, that God has allowed him to have. He has reins on what he can do. If you've ever read the book of Job, you get to see a really pretty clear example about how God has control over Satan. Because Satan's like, all right, I want to do this, I want to do that, or this is why these things are happening. God's like, look, you can attack Job, but you can only go this far. You have to stop here. And then Satan comes back, and God's like, all right, you can go here now, okay, but you have to stop here. And he always gave him a boundary, gave him a place where he had to stop. Jesus, when he was being arrested and about to be taken to trial and about to be crucified, in Luke chapter 22:53, he said, but for this moment, the power of darkness reigns. So Jesus is like, look, for right now, the devil is kind of getting his way, so to speak, or is these things are happening, darkness is reigning because I'm about to go through this. But it is only for this period of time. It is only for this section that God has said can happen. And then we know the story after that is he defeats sin and death because he raises again that 3 days later. And then because of what he was able to do, we have salvation through that. So the devil only has the power, only has anything that God has allowed. God has the power over sickness and death and life in this world. We can read through the Bible about how God has the power to take life. Gene talked about it. I think it was when he was talking about righteousness. There were those priests who were carrying the ark and they were moving the ark, and God said, "Okay, don't touch the ark. Okay, that's my rule, because that is kind of like my physical representation of me. So you're not allowed to touch it, except with they had like a certain system that they had to go through to move the ark and to do these things, and they weren't doing that, and they touched it, and he killed them. They died because of his power. There was a king in Jerusalem, or a ruler. I don't know if he was a king or a ruler. It was a king. It was King Herod. Yeah. And the people were talking about how he's like the voice of God, and he's like God, and they were just putting all this praise upon him that he did not deserve and was not for him. And it says because he didn't direct that back to God, what God should have, it said he got worms and died because of God's power. God also has the power to heal and the power to bring people back from the dead. Think about, there were disciples who brought people back from the dead. Peter, who brought a sick girl back from the dead. Jesus, who brought Lazarus back from the dead after he had died. You think about, Jesus' resurrection was through the power of God. Because of God's power over death and life and sin, he brought Jesus back to life. In Romans, our salvation is only possible because of the power God holds in this world. In Romans chapter 1, verse 16, it says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of salvation for everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek." So, talking about how it's because of God's power that we're able to have salvation. So we see a lot of different areas, all these areas where God has power over those things. But then I think a very important part of that is that God's power is not without understanding, okay? So has anyone ever worked for a boss, or maybe been the boss, who had a lot of power but didn't know exactly how to use it best, okay? Didn't maybe know exactly what to do with their power, or they didn't use it in a good way. They had it, but they did not use it in a way. I sometimes feel that way. It's like I'm the boss. I own this veterinary practice, and sometimes I think you do not have enough understanding and knowledge to do this well. But that's not God, because when we look at his omniscience, okay, so that next attribute of God. So again, we got another Latin word, two Latin words. So again, that same Latin word omnis, okay, omni meaning all, and then scientia, boy, I totally said that wrong, but basically it means knowing or knowledge. And it's where we get our word science from, okay? So God has all knowing, all understanding. So he has all the power, but he also has all the understanding and knowledge to know how to use that power well. In Psalms 147:5, it says, "Great is our Lord and mighty in power. His understanding has no limit." So we're going to do an exercise, okay? So you're going to raise your hand, okay? And if you don't know how to do this, you're going to pull your hand down, okay? Okay? So who knows how to tie their shoes? Perfect. We're good. I think I have everybody's hand up. Okay. So if I go through here, if you don't know how to do anything, just pull your hand down. No judgment. It's okay. Nobody's going to think any less of you. Who knows? If you don't know how to order a pizza, take your hand down. Okay, good. Most people still got that up. Perfect. So, if you know how to bake a cake, keep your hand up. Okay, yep. Lost a couple. That's okay. I do know how to bake a cake as long as I've got a box with instructions. So, does that count? I don't know. Who knows how to change a tire? If you don't know how to change a tire, take your hand down. Okay. All right. So, how about rebuild an engine? Only keep your hand up if you know how to rebuild an engine. So, my hand's got to come down. This is better than Friday. There's a lot more people who know how to rebuild an engine in here. Okay. This is where, so who knows how to fly a plane or a helicopter? I'm going to go and throw a helicopter in there. Nice. Okay. Hey, we still got some people out there. Sweet. Okay. So who knows how to fly a spaceship? Oh, wait. Oh, man, I was like, that for sure is going to get everybody in here, because if someone did get to keep their hand up, I was going to have to go talk to that person. So as you see, we all run out of knowledge at some point. We're all going to hit some point where we're like, I don't know that. All right, I don't know that. I don't know how to do that. God never runs out of knowledge. His knowledge has no limit. He never has to learn anything. Gene talked about this a little bit when he talked about God being immutable. Because it was like, if he did have to change, if he did have to learn something, so he was different from before, that would mean there's something he didn't know, so he was not perfect. And so he wasn't God before. So that's why God can't change, because it would mean that he was not God before he changed. And same thing with learning something. He can't learn anything. I love this idea keeps popping up in the Bible about how God has no counselor. I'm very thankful that I have a lot of counselors in my life, people who can speak truth into my life and who can help teach me things, whether it be in my professional life as a veterinarian, whether it can be in my life as a father, whether it could be in my life as like an elder and as like a leader of the church. But no one had to teach God anything. No one can add to his knowledge. I got to think about, even when I pray, when I confess my sins to God, it's not like I'm telling him anything that he didn't know, and I'm giving him this new secret information into my life. He knew it. He already knew that it was there. In Job chapter 21, verse 22, it says, "Can anyone teach knowledge to God, since he judges even the highest?" Or in Romans 11:34, it says, "Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor?" I mean, because he knows everything. He has all knowing and understanding of how things work. So no one can teach him anything or has to teach him anything. He's self-sufficient in that. God knows everything going on in this world. There's nothing in this world that is a surprise to God. He understands how things work. In Job 37:13-15, it says, "Listen to this, Job. Stop and consider God's wonders. Do you know how God controls the clouds and makes his lightning flash? Do you know how the clouds hang poised, those wonders of him who has perfect knowledge?" Psalms 50:11, "I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals of the field are mine." I mean, so everything, every little detail, every little thing about what's going on in this world, God understands and knows. I mean, I have a hard enough time keeping track of my 3 kids and my work, and like bills are paid, and this small little realm of things. But God knows everything that's happening in the world. Nothing surprises him. We talked earlier about our sins. Confessing our sins to him is not giving him information or knowledge that he doesn't have. He knows about our sin. He knows about the times when I don't show love to my kids, when I'm my lack of faithfulness in his word and in what he says about life. These aren't surprises to him when they happen, but he still loves me, and he still sent his son to die on the cross for me. Even having all of that knowledge about my sin and about your sin and about the sin of this world and about the people who were, about even his, I think about his chosen people, the people who he drew out and made a nation, that weren't a nation. They weren't a people. And he's like, "I'm going to make you into a people. I'm going to make you into a nation." He knew that they were going to reject his son. I mean, he knew that going into it, but he still said, "Because I love my people, because I want a relationship with them, because I want to be the Lord of their life, because I want them to follow me," he goes, "I'm going to do all of these things," even in knowing that. Because I think sometimes we can get in our head and think about, the things that God knows about us, and that he doesn't want us or doesn't want to know us, but he does, because he did know about it when he did the work on the cross. He understands how the world works, how governments and politics and business and economics and how all of these things work together, so he knows how all of these things come together. I mean, we look at these times in this world with inflation and housing markets and jobs and unemployment and the politics of all of that and the business interactions of all of that, and it can be mind-boggling to try to, and then you throw in the medical stuff with COVID and everything, and we see all of these things, and people disagree about how to do it, and they think this should be done this way, and I think that it should be done this way. But we can remember and we can rely on the fact that we have a God who understands how all of that works together. We may not get to see it all work out together or know why it's happening this way, but we know that God does. And then the last thing in understanding is that he knows and he understands us, me as a person. He knows me and he understands me. I mean, there are books and stories and poems and movies and music so much written about just wanting to find that person who understands you and wanting to find that person who gets you and who understands who you are. And there will never be a person on this earth who understands you and knows you better than God. I mean, my wife knows a lot about me, okay? I mean, I share like everything with my wife, but there's still things that she does not understand about how I work, how I do things, why I do things. But God knows all of those things about me. In John chapter 10, verse 14 through 15, it says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me. Just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father, so I sacrifice my life for the sheep. So, I mean, God knows his people. God knows his creation. I got to thinking about how there's many a times that I will lie in bed, at night, and I'm, praying and kind of going over my day, and sometimes I'm asking myself, why did I do that? Why was I so harsh with my kids today? Why was I unforgiving in that situation? Why did I spend so much time worrying about that thing with my job? And thankfully, usually thankfully, I get to being thankful, God will tell me why. It's like, it's because you don't trust me, maybe. Or it's because you're valuing yourself more than somebody else. It's because you're fearful of what's going to come from that. Because God knows me, because God understands me, God is also able to speak into life when I ask those why questions. Why do I do this? Why do I act this way? And I think he does it because he also wants us to know how to change, how to be more like him, how to follow him. The better I understand why I do the things that I do, both good and bad, okay, the better I can know how to follow him, the better I can know how to serve him. There's some verses in Psalm. There's a psalm that the whole thing is really a great just description. Uh-oh, did I lose my? Give me a moment. Apparently I lost my little page marker. It's Psalm 139, and we're going to read some different parts of this because I think it's just such a cool picture of how God understands us and how he knows us. So in Psalm 139, it says, O Lord, you have examined my heart, and you know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts, even when I'm far away. You see me when I travel and when I rest at home. You know everything I do. You know what I'm going to say, even before I say it, Lord. You go before me and follow me. He says, you go before me and follow me. You place your hand of blessing on my head. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too great for me to understand. And then we're going to jump down to verse 17. It says, how precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I mean, so to think about this is the number of times that God thinks about you, that God thinks about you back there in the back row, is innumerable. I mean, he thinks about us so many times, and how precious those thoughts are to know that God is thinking about me. And those thoughts are good thoughts because he is a loving God. He is a merciful God. Now, sometimes those thoughts are for, I really do not want him to continue in that sin. And I am, as a loving father, I'm going to work on trying to change that in their life, which can sometimes be painful. But they are always directed toward our good and for his good too, and for the good of his kingdom. It says, I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me. I just still can't, sometimes I think, I know that I don't truly grasp how great it is that God is thinking about me all the time. I mean, I think about like at work, and when I think about my wife, I'm like, yeah, she's probably thinking about me. Hopefully she's praying for me, and I know that she is, but God is doing that even more than my wife is doing that, or that my kids maybe are thinking about me and thinking about how awesome I am, because I'm sure that's probably like 90% of their thoughts about me. But God knows me. He knows you. He understands you as a person. And so then the final attribute that I'm going to talk about is omnipresence. So again, we got another Latin word. We're going to, and again, breaking it down, this one's pretty easy. Omni, again, meaning all. Present, meaning present, here, around. God has existed forever. I mean, before creation, there was God. At the end of this world and at the end of everything, God will still be there, and he will be there through every part of it. And God's everywhere all the time, but not like in this idea, because sometimes, and I think we'll hear this idea in the world or hear this thing, well, God's like in everything, or God, everything is God, and everything, like creation is God, and like, so he's in the trees, and he's in the water, and he's in the sky, and he's part of the, and so I'm gonna do my thing with God in nature, and in that, and he's not. He created those things. I mean, he created them, but he is the creator of them. He is not like those things, but he created them, and his presence, his being, his who he is there and is present in all of those things, or is present everywhere, but it's not like he is those things. So when I was doing my sermon and kind of working on this and on my kitchen table, it was kind of cool and kind of humbling at the same time, as I had this empty chair beside me, and I was like, in my sanctified imagination, I was thinking, like God is like sitting there, like watching over me and like helping me and hope and guiding my thoughts and guiding my words to bring his message, because it even says that we have his Holy Spirit. If we believe in what Christ did on the cross and we accept his sacrifice for our salvation, it says we get his Holy Spirit living inside of us, which Jesus said, that's better than having Jesus said, that's better than having me walking around on this earth. And I know for a lot of years, I always kept thinking, but why? How does that, I mean, wouldn't it just be better if he were here and then everyone could see what he was doing and everyone could believe in what he did? But Jesus is like, in God's knowing and understanding of this world, he's like, nope, it's better for him to leave and for you to have the Holy Spirit inside of you. But I got to think about like God was doing that same thing with Paul and with Peter and with Jeremiah and Isaiah when they were preaching. And so it's like, man, we have God, sitting beside us. And God is not, again, another way that God's not like us, God's not present like people can sometimes be present. So who has ever been somewhere, but their mind was somewhere else? They were, and maybe right now, because I know I've been in church, and I've been thinking about other things, So as people, sometimes we can be present, but our minds are somewhere else. We're thinking about other things, and we're focused on something else. Or you've been with that person, you can tell that person that you're trying to have an interaction with, you're trying to talk to, you're trying, to be that they're somewhere else. God's not like that, because God's not like us. So when he is present, when he is around, he is also present and thinking about us and about our situation. Jeremiah 23:24, it says, who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord. Do not I fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord. I mean, so like he is everywhere. Nothing's outside his observation or supervision. So that success that you have enjoyed, that great joy that you're experiencing, God's with you in that, and God wants to celebrate in that with you. That challenge that you're facing, that hardship that you're walking through, that diagnosis that maybe you or a family member received something medically that's like, this is bad, this is not good, or that loss that you're going through. God is with you in that, and he wants you to know that he's with you in that situation. In Psalms, we're going to go back to Psalms chapter 139, but in verses 7 through 12, it says, I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. If I go up to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the grave, you are there. If I ride the wings of the morning, if I dwell by the farthest oceans, Even there your hand will guide me, and your strength will support me. I could ask the darkness to hide me, and the light around me to become night. But even in darkness I cannot hide from you. To you the night shines as bright as day, and darkness and light are the same to you. So there is no place that we can go that we could escape from God. And you know, when thinking about this and that last section especially, sometimes in our sin, sometimes in our failures, sometimes in the things that we just mess up in. And those things that sometimes, I know for me, I have these things in my life that I feel like, man, I've been a Christian for a long time, but why is this still a struggle? Why is this still hard? Why do I still keep falling in this area? And sometimes we can think that our sin, that our failure, that our disappointment, to God is something that will keep him away from us, that will keep him at bay, and that will hold him back. And I love it when it talks about, where is this? This is in verse 11. It says, I could ask the darkness to hide me, okay? So I could ask that sin or that shame or that guilt or that stuff to hide me and to keep me secret and away from God. And it said, and the light around me to become night. It says, but even in darkness I cannot hide from you. So even in that sin, even in that failure, even in that thing that we think is just, I have just messed up one too many times, God, it is not enough to keep God away. Because he will be there with us and wants to be there with us. Because it says, to him, the night shines as bright as day, because his glory, his love, his forgiveness is more powerful than anything we could ever do or anything that we could ever commit. But in thinking about that, there is one place that God will not be, and that's in hell. I also got to, when we were talking about heaven and hell, and I was going to preach, and Gene said, I'm going to let you speak about hell. And I was like, great, that sounds like fun. That should be a good message. But it was great to get to look at and talk about this place that thankfully I know that I'm not going to go, but why do we not want to go to hell? Why do we want to talk to people about hell so that they know that, man, there is a way that they can avoid that? And one of the things that came out of this is that in hell, God's presence is not going to be there. God's love, God's justice, God's mercy, God's welcome, God's truth, God's forgiveness, those things are absent in hell, okay? I mean, this world is broken, and this world is not heaven, okay? But there is still God in this world. There is still his love. There is still his mercy. There is still his forgiveness. But in hell, those things are going to be completely absent and completely gone. And so, man, that is why we do not want to go there, and why we do want to let people know, hey, that is the default. That is kind of like without God, that is the choice. So only when we choose God, only when we choose Jesus, do we get to avoid that. So we talked about God being all-powerful, God being all-knowing, God being present everywhere. And so when you bring that together, I think about how God has complete power. He has the perfect and complete understanding to use that power, and he's also everywhere at once to be able to exert that power and understanding. So without all three of those things, it doesn't work, but he has all three of those things. And so this gives him infinite capacity. He's fully autonomous. He does not need anything to help him or to help him do his job. He's completely self-sufficient. And so he can provide for our needs, for the world's needs. I was talking to a guy about this message, and he was sharing about how he was listening to someone talk about kind of God and creation. And he first started talking about like the stars and just the immense distances that stars are apart from one another, and how wide and how huge our galaxy is and our universe is. I mean, it's just numbers that just boggle your mind when they talk about this star, you could fit like 8 million Earths, inside this star. I mean, just things that you can't even wrap your head around, and how many light years apart, things are. And then he started talking about atoms and like subatomic particles and the minute forces that hold our world together. I mean, these things that we can't even see, with our eyes, but we can kind of get with all these machines and things, kind of get glimpses of what's down there and how small it's like. And every time we try to figure out, all right, we're at the bottom of it. Nope, we split that atom again, and we're like, wait, nope, there's some pieces to that. And it just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And he was talking about how, so we've got God who grasps that and created that and this, and in the middle, we're in the middle, of all that, and he understands and knows us and loves us and wants to know us. And it was just this cool idea about how the breadth and the width and the enormity of what God understands. I found these verses in Jeremiah chapter 10, and it was just such cool. So Jeremiah is talking to the Israelites there and sharing them about who their God is and about why he should be their God and why they should follow him. It says, "But the Lord is the only true God. He is the living God and the everlasting King. The whole earth trembles at his anger. The nations cannot stand up to his wrath. Say this to those who worship other gods. Your so-called gods who did not make the heavens and earth will vanish from the earth and from under the heavens. But the Lord made the earth by his power. He preserves it by his wisdom. With his own understanding, he stretched out the heavens." So he's like, look, you've got these other little g gods, these other, things you can worship. They didn't make anything. They didn't make this world. They didn't create anything. We've got the God. The Israelites have the God who created this world, who is their God. But some of these of them are going to choose to follow this God who really can't do anything. Doesn't have infinite power and doesn't have, complete understanding and doesn't have the ability to be everywhere all at once. And so for me, man, when I was reading through this and doing this study and praying and I came to this conclusion. It says, I think when we look at all of these attributes, all of these qualities, his omniscience, his omnipotence, and his omnipresence, I come to one conclusion, that God is the only one who's qualified to be Lord of my life. Okay? He is the only one who's qualified for me to say, all right, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to follow you? Because he has the power, the understanding, and the presence to make all of these things happen. But I know, even in my own life, my thoughts, my actions, my words, they sometimes don't say that God is the Lord of my life, And so those are places where, man, I need to work on giving those things over to him. I need to look at God, and I need to pray, and I need to and seek those counselors in my life who can speak truth to say, hey, Lord, how do I make you Lord of my life in that area? In Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, it says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart also will be." So in that idea of where I put my value, where I invest my resources, my time, my energy, my skills, where I invest that's going to show what I value, okay? And so I have a responsibility, and I have the duty or whatever, however you want to put with that, okay, I said that I want your salvation, and I trust in what you did on the cross. And so I was like, all right, now I want to be Lord of your life. I want to lead you. And so that involves me saying, okay, how do I do that? How do I follow you? How do I trust you? Because you're all powerful, all knowing, and you're everywhere. So with that, I've got a couple of points, take-home points for y'all to go over, and then we'll finish up. So the first one about his omnipotence is that we have the only all-powerful being on our side. He is for us. He wants the best for us. He has the power to change us, to make us more like him, so that we can serve him. I mean, our salvation, it doesn't rest in my strength. There's not one person out here, me included, that has the power to save themselves. I mean, no one can be good enough. No one can give enough. No one can come to church enough. No one could preach enough. No one could, pick any of those things that we can do, in our own strength and our own power, none of those things are enough to save ourselves. In Ephesians chapter 1, verse 19, it says, I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in him. This is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. It was God's power that did the work. It's God's power that will save us. It's not my power. It's not my strength. Number two, with his omniscience, God knows and understands you better than you understand yourself. He knows you. He wants you to see why you are the way you are, so that he can then change you to be more like him, so that he can lead you to the life that he has for you. I was listening to the radio one morning going into work, and this guy was sharing about, these people were sharing all of these kind of self-help, I don't know if self-help phrases was the right word, but like phrases like to encourage and to strengthen, but these were coming from the world. These weren't coming from Christian people. And one guy said, you should just be fiercely authentic, and he goes, so I think I know what he was trying to say. He was trying to say that to be yourself and to not let people tell you, who you should be and what you should do and how you should act. And man, that is in this world, that no one can tell you who you are. No one can tell you what you should do. And in the end, a person can't, okay? Because a person doesn't know you, but God can. God can tell you who you are and who you should be and who he wants you to be, because he's the only one qualified to be Lord of my life and your life. So, yeah, there are people that we should not listen to in our life who are not going to speak truth into our life and are not going to tell us the truth about who we are. But God will tell you the truth about who you are, because he knows you and he understands you. And then finally, God is always with us. We are never alone. No matter how alone we may feel in a situation that we're walking through, no matter how alone we may feel in your family, if there's division and if there's strife and if there's things that aren't together, it says you're not alone. No matter how alone you may feel because of failures, because of sin, God is with you, and God wants better for you. God wants to lead you out of that. So we have a God who is all-powerful, all-knowing, and with us all the time. So with that, I'm going to pray, and then we're going to do communion. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you for today. Thank you for your son, Jesus. Lord, thank you for just the fact that we have an all-powerful God and an all-knowing God and a God who is with us all the time. We can trust that. There are times that we may not see it, and there are times that it may not be clear that you are in power and that you are in control, but we know that you are. And so, Lord, I just pray that we can take these truths and we can hide them in our hearts and we can keep them there and use them throughout this week and throughout this month and throughout this year. When we talk to people, when we're at work, when we talk to our kids, when we talk to our friends, when we talk to our family, that those truths come out in our life, in our actions, in our words. Lord, we love you and we trust you. Amen. All right. So if the servers want to start getting communion together and start passing that out, communion is something that we practice every service at Real Life because we think that it is such an important thing to remember what Christ did on the cross for us. We do have an open communion table, so if you are not a member here, that is okay. You're more than welcome to partake in communion with us. But we do ask that you be a believer in what Christ did on the cross. And if you're not, and if you have questions about that, please, I'll be down here to pray with people. We'll have some others down here to pray. We would love to pray with you about that and talk with you about what it means to follow Christ. But in that, in the importance of communion, we also think it's important that we have our hearts in the right place, and that we have our hearts in the right spot. So we think going through some directed prayer can be very helpful in getting our hearts in the right spot. So I just want to lead us through some things to be praying about and things to be bringing before God. The first is pray for yourself. I mean, confess your sins to God. Even though he knows them, he still asks us to confess them to him and bring them before him and repent of those things. bring the successes and the things that you're so thankful about and what God has done in your life and how he's revealed the truth of who he is in your life. Pray for those who are lost. Thank you. Those who are hurting, those who are walking through those really, really hard and challenging things in dark times where they just don't know that they see that God is all powerful and God loves them and God knows them. Pray that they can see those things. And then finally, pray for the church. Pray for our church. Pray for our leaders. Pray for the churches in the Silver Valley. Pray for the churches in Idaho, for churches worldwide, that they can all be just united and working toward God's kingdom. Thank you. So let's take a moment to pray. Okay. So when Jesus was setting up just this practice of communion and the Lord's Supper, he was with his disciples. And it was the night before he was about to go and be arrested and be tortured and crucified. And he said, I want to leave you with this thing to remember, because he knew that I was going to forget. I was going to sometimes not remember how important it is that what he did on the cross and who he was and why he was the only one who was able to do that. And so that's what we're remembering tonight. In Matthew chapter 26, or this morning, Matthew chapter 26, 26. It says, while they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, take and eat. This is my body. So let's take this and remember Christ's body broken for us. And then in verse 27 and 28, he says, then he took a cup, and when he'd given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. So let's take the cup together and remember Christ's blood shed for us. I'm going to pray for communion. We've got one last song. Some of us down here, if you'd like to pray, anybody to pray with you, we would love to do that. And then I'll close this out. Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for this reminder that you were willing to be broken, to be beaten, to be humiliated, to be tortured, to die a criminal's death on a cross, so that I could know you, so that the people in this church could know you, so the people in the valley could know you, so the people in Coeur d'Alene and in Washington and in America and in everywhere across the world could know you and could know the hope and the love and the forgiveness that you offer. But also, Lord, so that they can make you Lord of their life, because without that salvation, without taking that step of belief, you can't, because we haven't given ourselves to you. But Lord, you are qualified to be the leader and Lord of our life. Lord, I just pray that you can help me to see how I need to do that more and more in my life. Lord, we love you and we trust you. Amen.
Go ahead and stand with us as we continue. Close out the service with a new song. It's a good one. When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is a mountain, you see a mountain move. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? Yeah. For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. When all I see is a cross, God, you see the empty tomb. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God.
have to admit, Friday night, I didn't really listen to the song very much because I think I was just running through the sermon in my head. And I was like, oh, man, what did you do with that? Was that okay? Was that good? But then I actually listened to it tonight. And so in that first verse where it talks about how sometimes, because I see that in my life, all I see is the battle, or all I see is the mountain. All I see is this thing that I'm going through, and I forget that God sees the victory, and he sees that mountain moved. He sees that thing changed. He sees that other side of it, because he's eternal and because he's always existed, and he sees all time laid out, and I don't. And so how I have to keep walking through him through that. So just such a cool song to end in. And I wanted to read some verses from Romans chapter 11. It says, "Oh, how great are God's riches in wisdom and knowledge. How impossible is it for us to understand his decisions and his ways. For who can know the Lord's thoughts? Who knows enough to give him advice? And who has given him so much that he needs to pay it back? For everything comes from him and exists by his power and is intended for his glory. All glory to him forever. Amen." I mean, that he is the one who is worthy and deserves all of our admiration and all of our service. So, Lord, love you, church. Thank you. Have a good one.